Hi, my name is Ron Chamberlain, and I'm going to be the one behind the camera lens tonight. I want to take this opportunity to welcome our alumni and our guests for the Boulder City High School All Classes Reunion 1942 to 1964. Tonight's MC, Roy Atkins. And so we hope to have a good time. Let's get started.
As we know, sometimes we have a challenge in getting everything together. This sound system is because of donations made by you. So to the Boulder City High School. We had a scholarship fund that started back in 1956 and has continued on. Those scholarships were used, and later they found out that there are so many scholarships that these high school students receive that we decided just to give a product like this sound system to the high school. The students are over here on the left. They come here to help us, and I want to give them a round of applause. We have a lot of people here, some special guests tonight. I think we call them guests. We have over the class of 1943, Fred Holland. You want to stand up, Fred? Fred's right over here. We have from the class of 44, I think it's, what's your first name? Mr. Wishart? Bill, that's right, thanks, Bill. We have Ron Catherine Carl. She's from the class of 49. Alice Dodge. And Isla Cody. She's not here either. Is Alma the class of, let's have the class of 52 stand. Over here, class of 52. Okay, right there, Maury Lottery, David Littler. Way to go, okay. All right. Class of 54. We have Luther Hatfield, Fred Jonathan, Thomas Lopez, Lanny McEwen, right here. Here we go, right here, class of 54. Carl Fredericks, the lone person from the class of 55. Where are you, Carl? Way to go. And from the class of 56, we have over here. There we go. Notice the school spirit, I'm part of them. Way to go. Okay. We have the class of 57, right there in the middle. We have Dallas A. here, Cornelia Bates, I don't see her here. Olinda Franklin, Carol Sue Hamilton, Jim Horner, Carol Horner, Raymond Johnson, Barbara Kelly, Eugene Mitchell, Louise Mitchell, Richard Roper, Kathy Roper, Louise Smee, Susan Stice, and Mickey Dillon. Did I miss anybody? Okay, class of 58, right over here. Great school spirit. Linda Bergeson. I don't see Brent Caldwell here. Brent Caldwell was my roommate at Marquette in Wisconsin. He's sick tonight. I know he's had some health issues. Lon Chamberlain, right here, doing videoing. Is Paul Cook here? No, is this the whole class right here? There's a lot of those names in.
No, some more over here.
Francis Foot's right here. Charles Horner, Joanne Jenny, Georgia Julian, Don Lida, Eileen Lida, Diane Nelson, Charles Ritchie, Pat Shea, and Jim Widener. How about class of 59? Where's class of 59? Yeah, that's good. Great to hear. Okay. I have Sandy Hemdorf, Julie Hunsaker, Carol Hyde. Is Carol Hyde here? Carol, way to go. Good to see you. Her brother was in our class of 56 and was killed in Vietnam in his jet airplane. He was a second graduate from the Air Force Academy. We love Mike. Glad to see you here, Carol. Great. So we got Leo Leonard, Marianne Magoo, Mary Lee Myers, Nancy Oldfield, Don Stice, and Dick Trelease. Okay, great. Class of 60, where are they? All right, let's hear it a little louder. Okay, we got Ann Adams, Alan Amons, Carol Amon, Mike Berry. Hey, way to go, Mike. And Pat Mahoney. Here with him, Pepper Combs. Is Jessica here tonight? No, I guess not. Okay, Joan Harvey and Vigor Nelson, Karen Hill, Bob Rogers, Larry Hill, Kathleen Hunter, Dave Fleshley, sorry, Pam Kaiserman, Don McMurray, Marvin Mays, Norman Miller, Rosalind Russell, Bob Mort Hill, Bonnie Sherry, James Hudson, Stephen Stay, Sandy Stay, Bill Trelease, and Beverly Christensen. Thanks for being here. Okay, class of 61. We're 61. We have 4 here, Harvey Boyce, Paula Hurt, Pete Mays, Rennie Mays, and Sharon Rogers. Yeah. Class of 62. We're 62. That's the way. Danny Alstrom, Pandora Alstrom, Bruce Anderson, Andrea Anderson, Elaine Bowie, Deanne Cook, Dick McMahon, Marie Garn, Magoo, Maureen Hardcastle, Jan Harold, Dennis Magoo, Marjorie Pease. Is Marjorie Pease here? Are you in relation to Ken Rose? How was that? Pardon? Sister, that's right. You used to live down behind me. I remember you now. You're a little girl. Sandra Hanning and Don Klinger in class of 63. Class of 64, I'm not going to go all of your names. I want you to stand up this time. Class of 1945 is not here. We had some tremendous teachers, and I'm going to tell a little story right here, interject a story here about a man by the name of Gene Schultz. Gene Schultz was taught us in high school as a football coach, and terrific individual. Here's a story I'd like to tell. There used to be a ball field down here called Peterson Field. And Peterson Field is where we had all the bonfires and we had all the ball games down there. Well, one evening I was going to go into the 7th grade and Gene Schultz came there with some friends. I hadn't seen Gene Schultz since I was a little kid, so I couldn't recognize him. So he's introduced to me. They introduced him to me as being Buster Ringer. But he was known as Gene Schultz because he was adopted by his father, Ringer. But he went back to his normal name of Schultz. So I said, "Hello, Buster, how are you doing?" And he says, "Fine." He says, "I'm going to be teaching over at the junior high this coming fall." I said, "Great, I'll look forward to seeing you, Buster." Well, the first day of school, he walks down the hallway, and I'm at the locker, and I'm going to show all the kids that I knew Buster. So I turned to him and I says, "Hi, Buster, how are you?" He grabbed me by the shirt, threw me against the locker, and says, "It's Mr. Schultz to you." That was my introduction to the 7th grade. We have Fred Jonasson here, and his mother taught in 6th grade, Mrs. Jonasson. She was a great gal. I remember one time that Dick Dawson and I decided to ditch school one afternoon. And it happened to be one of the tests for world history, I think it was. World geography. I can't remember exactly. And anyway, we went home and we started to play cards. We're playing cards in my house with a couple of kids, and all of a sudden my mother got off early from the Green Hut restaurant, which was Georgia Julian and Willard Julian's parents owned the restaurant. And I remember when she came, I heard her coming in the door. I got Dick and them out the back door and jumped in bed. She came in and said, "What's wrong with you?" I says, "Well, I'm not feeling too well." She says, "You look pretty good to me." I says, "Is the school still going?" I said, "Yeah." I says, "You better get back there." Well, I got back there and Mrs. Jonasson said, "You know, you missed the test. What are we going to do with you now?" Well, I got a poor grade for that day, but that was your mother. I remember her very well. The class of 42 had some great people in it. I remember that we had a lady by the name of Rose Higgins, and she married Leonard Stubbs. And he'd gone to Vegas. Vegas is where he had to go to school. because the first graduating class was in 42, and Rose graduated from Boulder City in 1942. Actually, she didn't graduate. The story she told me was that she hadn't taken Nevada history, and Elbert Edwards said that she couldn't graduate. Well, she didn't graduate. She didn't walk. She had her cap and gown on and everything. I saw a picture of her, but she didn't graduate. Years later, she graduated with her son, I guess in the class of something like 60. I don't know what year he was in. I think Jimmy was his name. Jimmy Leonard, Jimmy Stubbs. Well, that was a little story. Now you got something to do for me? Okay. This is a quiz. Who wrote the lyrics for our school song, Hail Through Thee, Dear Alma Mater? Does anybody know? She wrote the music. Who wrote the words? Pardon? Does anybody remember? That's exactly right. Elaine Abercrombie. And Elaine Abercrombie had brothers who went to high school here at Boulder City High. We have the students from the high school right now. They're going to join with us in singing the Alma Mater. Who can carry a pitch for Hail to Thee, Dear Alma Mater? Can anybody? Hey, can any of you over here? Anybody? Okay.
Hail to thee, dear Alma Mater, nestling midst the desert sands, under skies of azure blue, found by nature's wonderland, temple of our hopes and learning.
Staunch and through your colors fly, blue and gold, a beacon ever bolder. Thank you. Way to go. Good sports. You can tell that I wasn't in the glee club. I like to tell a little story about cheerleaders. When I was in the 7th grade, my sister, who was in the class of 52, decided it'd be a good idea if we had a male cheerleader. So she conned me into running for cheerleading. The junior high and the high school was together, as you know, and the junior high cheerleaders would actually cheer for the junior varsity. Well, I practiced with the cheer, learning to cheer, and the cheer that I remember was One a Zippa. Does anybody remember One a Zippa? Okay, it goes 1 a Zippa, 2 a Zippa, 3 a Zippa Zam. We are the Eagles and we don't give a halabalooka nicky nacky, halabalooka nicky nacky, wahi. Wahi, wahi, chin chin chow chow, woof woof bow wow and hi, how Boulder. How's that one play? Now, Coach Paget came along, and he was a football coach out of Michigan, and he became an honorable mention All-American. Well, he stayed with us for a couple of years, and he turned the high school football team over to Mark Stone. Mark Stone was from Wisconsin. He lasted for a year or two. We weren't doing very well. Finally, they decided to get Buster Ringer, Gene Schultz, to be the coach. Paget said, there'll never be a football team in this town. The players can't cut it. Well, when Gene Schultz took over, they won the state championship 2 years in a row. Hail to good old Gene Schultz. Now, is everybody happy? Is anybody low? Well, let's take this locomotion, let's take it slow. Ready? B-O-U-L-D-E-R. 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 Boulder, Boulder, Boulder. Way to go. Well, my cheerleading experience didn't last very long because we went over to Kingman. The junior varsity was playing, and the cheerleaders turned and faced an empty stand. No one was in the stand. And they said, we're going to do our yell right here. Ready, set? 1 a Zippa, 2 a Zippa. I said, hold it. The team's out here. We need to root for the team out here. They said, we're not going to do it. I said, then I'm not going to cheer with you anymore. And that was the end of my cheerleading experience. Now, I tell you another cheerleading experience. Where is Eugene Mitchell? Where is Eugene Mitchell? Where's Eugene Mitchell? He's at the bar? There he is. There's Eugene Mitchell. All of you recall Tommy Burt, don't you? Tommy Burt? Well, it came about 6 years later, the boys decided to be cheerleaders again. Tommy Burt and Eugene Mitchell were going to go out and try to be elected to cheerleaders. I don't know if you remember that, but I remember that Tommy ran up and jumped on Gene's back, and they rolled over, and everybody laughed, and they voted for him. But the school decided it was a farce, and they eliminated them from being cheerleaders at Boulder High. Sorry, Gene. Do you remember that? And he's gone. I guess all of you could come up here and give me a story of what your life's been here in Boulder City. I recall several things about Boulder City. I remember that we had the TWA Airlines, where the Elks Club is. You want to say something? I have a correction here. Larry Hill was elected to be cheerleader in high school. I didn't know that. Let's give Larry a hand. Where's Larry? Anyway, TWA Airlines was here in Boulder City, and I don't know how I want you to know how they got to New York. This line up here at the airport over here, the air strip over here by the Elks Club, and they would fly to Las Vegas. They would go from Las Vegas to Kingman, and Kingman to Prescott, Prescott to Phoenix, Phoenix to Albuquerque, Albuquerque to Kansas City, Kansas City to Chicago, Chicago to Pittsburgh, and then Pittsburgh to New York. That's how they got the TWA Airlines. I know that because my mom worked at the Bureau of Mines with some of your parents here. And they sent her back to Philadelphia to carry some information regarding titanium metals. In 1955, we built a big bonfire. They still do bonfires here for rallies in Boulder City, do they? What was? This supposed to be the last year. I recall when they set the bonfire out in about 1952 down at Peterson Field, that it caught all the telephone poles and the wires on, and it caused a big havoc. So they decided to move the bonfire down here by the ball fields, down behind the high school. Well, in 1955, while we were in high school, kids from Basic came over and started the fire and burned the bonfire down during the day. I don't know if you remember that. So we had no bonfire, but we had a few days, and they let us out of school, and we all gathered wood and everything and had a great big bonfire. Well, in 1955, or the next year, actually it was football season, we decided we're going to guard the bonfire all around the clock. And so we guarded the bonfire, and at night, about 5 carloads of Henderson Basic High School boys came over to burn it down. Guarding the bonfire was Willard Julian, Larry McCullum, Dougie Robinson, and myself. David Mulligan, were you doing it? Sorry, David. Were you there that night then? Okay. Sorry, David. So the guys came over, and Dougie Robinson had a shotgun. And he had filled the shells with popcorn. When they came out of the cars, they were up above us, and we were down below. He said, "I have a shotgun." They laughed. That was their last laugh. He let go of a couple of shots. Bang, 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 bang. Those popcorn shells hit those cars, and all you could hear was boom, 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 and the doors were all locked shut, and they went back to Henderson. We had a great bonfire, and that year we won the state championship in football. It all was attributed to Dougie Robinson and the rally. Pardon? Yes.
Talking about the basic people, Carl Fredericks and I went over to Henderson one night. Carl was driving and coming up the street there by the drive-in picture, or not picture, but the drive-in restaurant there. All these basic kids are out there and the girls are out there, and Carl leans out the window and says, "Suey, Suey, Suey." We headed to Boulder City with a whole trainload of cars behind us, gonna catch us. We come up here, I've got Carl do the roads out back by the golf course. We finally lost him.
Did I say something, David?
TWA, the airline was serviced by Gertrude Beeler, and her husband was a newspaper deliverer here in Boulder City. Also, the year before the bonfire, George Wiggard and I were guarding the bonfire, but they got in and wiped it out, so Henderson did it right. We blame it on Henderson.
I got it. Here's just some remembrances that I'm gonna sit down. We had those great snake dances, and we spent the year paying for the doors that were kicked in by the kids in the back of the snake dance. We went to some of the motels. Remember the band trips to Zion, to Grand Canyon, to Enterprise, to Hurricane. We even went to Jerome. That's a ghost city, ghost town now. Remember all of our majorettes that we had here, the marching bands, Roger Trosdell, the band leader. Remember the assemblies that Diane here, Diane Nelson Earl, she got Liberace to come over because her dad knew George Liberace, and we had Liberace here as playing the music. We also had the Lancers. I think Judy Hunsaker was one of the ones that got them over here. She was in the fan club. They came here to sing. I remember that. We also had the CIF championship games at Blythe. We won the CIF down there in basketball, and after the game, they threw gas across the highway, and as our bus stopped, they all gave us rocks, so they rocked the bus. I remember that. Also, those people who live up in Mesquite, Bunkerville, I remember one night, was Fred Hill in your class? Was Fred Hill in your class? He's now no longer with us, but Fred was the center of the basketball team. We went up to play Virgin Valley up at Mesquite in the Bunkerville gym, and there was a dispute between McCormick and the officials, and this town constable came over to break it up. And as he came over to break it up, he had no business doing it. Fred Hill jumped up and socked the constable right in the jaw, and he went flying across the floor. Andrew Mitchell at that time, who came here with Mabel Mitchell, he was the principal of Virgin Valley High. He turned all the lights off, and we got Coke bottles thrown all of us over by sitting on the bench warmers. I'm just going to rush through these real quick. Remember the bus rides down to the lake for swimming lessons? Remember the American Legion Hall where we had the 5th and 6th grades there? The radio station out here by the cemetery. We went out there and used their old records when they folded. When they quit spinning records, we used them as frisbees. Those were the original frisbees with those records. Remember no air conditioners here in town? Penmanship with ink pens. Remember the Girl Scout plane? It was donated to the Girl Scouts, and finally a person bought the plane, came in, and he flew it out of here. That was years ago. All of us ran through the sprinklers to keep cool up on the big park. Remember Whalen's Drum and Bugle Corps marching up and down the streets on California Street? Flash floods with earthen dams. We'd go out there, and we didn't have any swimming pools, so we'd go out there and swim in these flooded areas where they put a dam up with scorpions and things in them. I remember that. Rolling inside old tires down California Street, making our own skateboards, knock up and lay down. That was a baseball game. The pentathlon. I remember Roger Bonson won the pentathlon in Salt Lake. Remember the dogs? I remember Pepper Combs' dog Jinx. My mother could never come home on D Street because the dog would jump on her and maul her. Thanks to, I never could keep that dog on a chain. I remember Jinx. He was the boss's dog. and Jupiter. Remember Jupiter? Richard? Roper? Do you remember Jupiter? Jupiter, the dog behind you that we used to tease, and he'd come out there and almost chew our head off. Had a lot of zoos here. We had our own horny toads, lizards, snakes. Boulder City was going to be, at one time, was going to have a mascot. I don't know if it was going to be a lizard or a Gila monster, but they decided on the Eagles. They decided on the Clovers, the class of 42. Remember Camp Cyber? It was changed to Camp Williston. The Pet Cemetery, the Volunteer Fire Department, whitewashing the beam, GAA initiation. Remember the girls had to play basketball half court? They couldn't run up and down because they thought it was poor for your health. I remember Letterman's initiation. I'll forever be grateful for the class of 55. It actually was Art Edwards. I was getting paddled and beaten up pretty good. He stopped it. He forever became my friend. We had freshman initiation in those times. Today they put us all in jail for doing that, hazing them. We had soapbox derbies down Colorado Street. We had a freak snowstorm in 1947 when we got out of school for a few days. Remember Sir Malcolm Campbell came to take his jet boat on Lake Mead? The boat races of the lake. The mine shafts, when the Dillman kids fell down the shaft and they rescued him. The dirt golf course out there, made by the 6 companies. Dirt and the rock fights that we had. Hitchhiking to the lake, to Vegas. The dry lake is prehistoric trilobites. Peterson Field, dirt baseball infields, never got a clean hop. Bill McCullough, other men who made such an influence on us. I remember that Jim Thorpe came here and threw an opening pitch, and I was the catcher. If I'd have that autograph today, it would be worth a lot of money. Well, I've said enough to you. I just want to let you know that we're glad you're all here, and hope you have a good time. David.
I'm sorry I have to take a mistake in your years. The year 47, I don't believe, was the great snowstorm. I think it was 48, 49.
January 49. 47. I have Georgia Julian here, and she was the valedictorian of the high school, so I'll go along with her. Okay, thank you. 49. Alice says it's 49. Okay, Alice has volunteered to accompany us in singing Home Means Nevada. Home Means Nevada, you know, home means the hills, home means the sage and the pine tree. Outward the silver sun always shines, out in the northwest. Got the words there. Here we go. Thank you very much. That concludes what I have to say tonight. I hope you have a great time and come tomorrow night. Thank you.